For today's review, we are looking at Starman. And before I talk about the accessories and the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card that is included. And as you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork of Starman for the photo. On the backside, you do have the read-up for who the character is. His real name is Tom Keller, and it reads, Tom Keller was born in a floating observatory to astronomer parents from the planet Xandu. As a result of his unique introduction to the universe, Tom developed the power to borrow mass from stars to affect his own body and to alter the weight of any objects he concentrated on. He could also emit blasts of stellar energy. And that's a pretty good read-up on who Starman is as a character. And just like Damage, who we looked at on Monday, this figure does not come with any accessories at all. No interchangeable hands, no alternate head sculpts, no power effect parts. It is just the figure by itself. And this is a good example here where this figure would have benefited from actual accessories, like power effect parts. Because it says right here on the card, he could also emit blasts of stellar energy. Why did they not give him some power effects that can go on his arms? I don't know. Mcfarlane being Mcfarlane as usual. So what you get in this box, outside of the figure, you get the data profile card and the DC figure stand, which of course are always included, so that's a given. And since this is a page puncher, he does come with a comic book, which is the same exact issue that came with the Kingdom Come Superman and of course Damage that we looked at on Monday. Justice Society of America issue number 10. So now I have a total of 3 copies of these exact same comic books, and I don't know what to do with them. So there's that whole thing. And that's pretty much it for the content in this box. And now let's move on to aesthetics. So as you can see, this figure is the same exact figure mold, just like Damage. Everything is the same, the head sculpt's the same. The only difference here is how he looks. And in terms of what they did with this figure, adding all these little sparkly effects, as you can see throughout the entirety of the body buck, to replicate what he looks like in this comic book photo here, I think they did the best that they could, because making an action figure look just like this photo is not an easy thing to do. And for a figure that is meant to technically be budgeted, even though these figures are getting more costly now, I think this is the best version of Starman we'll ever see in action figure form, because, you know, sometimes certain characters like this that are not well known to the wider audiences out there, they're not going to make a lot of action figures for them compared to like Superman, Batman, you know, the big names. So in terms of this character, I think this is the best that we'll ever see in terms of a modern action figure for this character. So the decision to use these sort of sparkles here, they do work. They do replicate this sort of look that his entire body is supposed to basically represent the void of space with the stars and the cosmos, which is really cool. And this character reminds me a lot of Alien X from Ben 10. Of course, this character came before that, but my introduction to this character was way later. I didn't even know Starman existed in the DC universe until after. So my first time seeing a character that basically looks like this was Alien X from Ben 10. And yeah, that's pretty much the entire aesthetics of this figure, as you can see. So all these sparkles are present on the front side and the back side, and it's literally everywhere on the areas that are painted in black. So I do like that. And then when you look at its head sculpt, you see more of that sparkly effect as well. And this is basically my second figure to have this sort of aesthetic, because the first one that I reviewed was the Eradicator figure, and I want to bring that in for comparison. As you can see, they both share this similarity where they both have this sort of sparkle effect on them, and it's really cool to have 2 different figures have this same design in terms of the details on different plastic material. So for Starman, it's on solid plastic, and for Eradicator here, it is on translucent plastic, but it is the same exact sort of sparkle. Everything is the same. So the way that this is used for Starman actually works to replicate the stars. For Eradicator here, I don't really know what the sparkles are supposed to be, but the point is, you can see that this is not the first time they have done this on an action figure. So these two figures are also really recent too, so this is like the first two figures, I think, in this line that has introduced this sort of detail and design element to an action figure. Now, I'm not saying this is a new thing. This has been done on an action figure before in the past, but in terms of the DC Multiverse line from Mcfarlane Toys, these are the only two figures that I can remember have this sort of aesthetic. So that's pretty interesting. And in terms of like the longevity of how well these figures will hold up, I wonder what will happen with these. I'm kind of scared that they'll flake off, but maybe they won't. I'm not too sure how this stuff is even made into the figure. Like, did they mold this detail into the plastic? Maybe they did. I'm not sure how they did this, but it is pretty cool that it doesn't get on your fingers. So that's nice. And yeah, that's pretty much like the entirety of this figure when it comes to its aesthetics, because there's not much else I can really talk about here. He does wear, of course, these white gloves and, of course, these white boots, but that's pretty much it. There's no details going on there. And on the backside, as I showed before, it's literally the same thing. So at least in this case, with all these sparkles, they have it on the entirety of the figure, right? Because this character is supposed to look like a walking cosmos, so of course the backside has to have this detail. So yeah, pretty cool aesthetic. I like this, and again, this is the best that we will see for this character in action figure form. Moving on into articulation, it is the same articulation as the damage figure that we looked at on Monday, but let's just talk about the articulation again. So let's start with the head sculpt. He can look up if you want to get him into a flight pose. He can look down pretty good. He can also turn his head left and right, tilt his head side to side. So when it comes to the articulation with his head sculpt, it's pretty good. In terms of his arms, he can lift them out that high. He can swing them back all the way. And whoa, I just noticed something right there. His joint inside is a white color joint. Why is that not the same as the color here? That just throws it off even more now. I just noticed that right now. Wow, I missed that when we were talking about aesthetics and details. Okay, that is interesting. So he has a white colored joint for the top part of his arm. When down here it's like all black. It should probably look the same like this, right? To make the colors flow consistently. That is interesting. All right, there is that whole thing. He does have the double jointed arms. He also has the swivel in the hands, so they do rotate. There is wrist articulation and there is rotation with that wrist joint. And for his torso, it is very tight on this copy since this is new, so it doesn't really rotate in the best way possible. Leaning forward, not going to work. Leaning back, also not going to work. It is way too tight. As for his waist, it is really loose down here, so he does have good range of movement there. Leaning forward, not the greatest. Leaning back, well, he can lean back pretty good. As for his legs, he can do not a full split, but they can spread out. He can also kick out. He does have double jointed. He does also have articulation down here in the feet. There is swivel and toe articulation. And as for his upper thigh swivels, they do not move. They are very stiff. So that's pretty much all the articulation of this Starman figure. Now it's time for the main event, and that, of course, is comparisons. And we're going to bring in all the members of the JSA one by one, so you can see what he looks like next to each of the members of this team. So let's start off with Damage, who we looked at on Monday. And as you can see, they both share the same exact figure mold, head sculpt. Everything is completely reused here. The only differences between them is just their designs. And I will leave you to be the judge if this reuse is okay. Personally for me, since I will never see these figures ever again in the future, probably, depending on how long it takes Mattel to make these two characters again in their DC Multiverse line when they do come back with new DC figures, I'm happy with just the way they are, and I'm happy to have them in my collection. So there's Damage. Now moving on to Green Lantern. I think that fits pretty well right there. Here he is next to Jay Garrick Flash. He's not going to fall over this time, is he? No, he's not. And as you can see, Jay Garrick is taller than him by a little bit. Here he is next to Wildcat. Here he is next to Our Man. Pretty cool. Let's bring in Mr. Terrific. Also, not too bad. And this time I have his coat removed so you can see what he looks like without the coat next to Starman. There he is. Now let's bring in Commander Steel or Citizen Steel, whichever name you prefer for this character. Not too bad. And here he is with Power Girl. She is on a flight stand. And last but not least, here he is next to Spectre. He's also on a flight stand now. Not too bad. All right. That is pretty much going to be all the comparisons for today's review. And if you found today's review for Starman informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And I almost forgot my outro. With that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.